Hello and welcome to the Community Voice. I'm Fara Sachs. I am so excited because I have Flamenco Sephardit in the house today. Let's give a watch. Welcome back. This is really exciting. What great music. What are we in store for? And what is your backgrounds? How did this all happen? You come from different genres, all of you. Jeff Eckstein, Celia and Paco Fonta. Thank you so much for joining us on the Community Voice. Who wants to start talking about the background and their own backgrounds?
Well, should I go? Okay. Flamenco Sephardit started with the idea of Jeff that came to me and to Celia, offering us to do some fusion with the flamenco. And then I said, I will love it because there is a lot of connection between Sephardic music and flamenco. I mean, flamenco took a lot from Sephardic music, so why not to give it some back?
Absolutely. And Jeff, where did you grow up?
I grew up in New York.
You grew up in New York. Mm-hmm. You grew up in Chicago. You grew up in...
I grew up in Spain. I came here. I have been here for a long time now.
So, Jeff, how did this begin for you? Where did these roots and your background come from that you got involved with so many different genres and you're really fusing so many different applications to music, to dance, to singing? How'd that happen?
I'm a classical musician by trade and a symphonic and opera conductor, and I've always been a musician all my life, and I've also always been involved in Judaism in the synagogues when I was young, reading Torah, leading services, and singing a lot in the prayers at synagogue. And I've been conducting the opera here in Miami since about 2008, and I've always been interested in Latin music, speaking Spanish, learning about the different Latin genres, and flamenco always interested me, but about 10 years ago, I spent a few months in Miami and really explored the flamenco tablaos here, and that was my real draw into the singing and the passion of the art form. And I said, this is incredible, and I want to do a show that incorporates flamenco, but that takes flamenco with my Jewish roots and incorporate classical elements as well. So the initial question for me started with, can I take a classical guitarist and put them with a flamenco guitarist? Because it's almost as if they're two separate instruments. If you take someone who has studied straight classical music, and someone who is a flamenco guitarist, they're almost totally different. You know, classical musicians are reading what is on the page, and flamenco, you know, if I would describe Paco and say, just sing whatever you want and I'll follow you, and it's completely the opposite. So, you know, to put those kinds of musicians together and to say, well, actually, we both have different backgrounds, but we're all musicians, we all have this in common, can we put that together? And I wanted it to be a bigger message about peace in the world with everything going on today and 10 years ago, and, you know, always, just to say, can we make this a larger message about peace among religions and cultures? And that's where it came out.
And it's so successful. I've sat down for the last 2 hours. We had rehearsals and we did some taping beforehand. And so, yeah, it matches, it melts, it somehow flows together, the messaging of bringing different people, cultures, life together at this moment, and it works.
It does work. It absolutely works. It's a very interesting thing, and to be honest, you know, a lot of people could say, well, actually, flamenco really doesn't have anything to do with Sephardic music, which, you know, is the Ladino language, but it does, because Ladino is from Spain, and of course, the Spanish Jews had to leave Spain during the Spanish Inquisition, and they went to many countries. And the flamenco also has a lot of roots in the Jewish music at that time and from many different cultures. And even though the flamenco that we know today really is only about 200 years old, but the amazing thing is when you listen to the Ladino songs, they're speaking in a Spanish that is 500 years old. And even some of the melodies, as Paco was saying, are familiar melodies to a lot of the Spanish and flamenco song. So in a way, it was really easy to blend together. One of the things that's, of course, very, very different, of course, was the rhythms. And so we worked that out. Maybe Paco can tell you a little bit more about that.
About the rhythm?
Yeah, blending, for example, the rhythms of the flamenco, which is very complicated, with some of the Ladino songs, which have a more straightforward.
I will say in some way. I think the flamenco took a lot from how I said in the beginning. Before it took a lot from the Sephardit music, or from all the music in Spain. Flamenco is really a music from Spain, but it took from all the folk music that was going in Spain, including the Gregorian singing, and why not the Sephardic was the people. So it's very close to the flamenco. So the first thing I discover is when I hear the Sephardic music, I just say, oh, this song is very familiar to me. All of them practically is familiar for me. Or the song, even if I never hear them, I say all the song, oh, this sound very familiar because there is something very similar in flamenco already.
Right, and the Ladino, what is that language? What is that?
It's Old Spanish.
But it's interesting because it sounds like it's pulling from other. There's like a something is different than what we're used to.
The Ladino is, in Spain in the medieval ages, they had, a big Jewish community, and of course, the late 1300s, you had a lot of riots, you had a lot of forced conversion to Catholicism, which is where we talk about conversos, people who were formerly Jewish and now Catholic. Many of them converted willingly, some did not, and a lot of them kept their Judaism secret, and they still practiced, went to bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, things like that. So when the Jews were expelled from Spain during the Inquisition, that Judeo-Spanish or ancient Castilian, they took that language and brought it to the diaspora where they settled, Turkey, Greece, Yugoslavia, all these countries. So what you're hearing is a mix of all of those impacts, because Ladino, even the songs we're singing today, might be pronounced a little bit differently depending on the country where you hear them, because they became adapted to the new homelands of where they were. And it's interesting because if you look at Spanish evolved a bit through the years, but Ladino, because it was taken from Spain at that time, it's almost a more archaic form of Spanish. So you have the Spanish roots, but you have Aramaic, Arabic, and so many other influences that you can hear it in there, but the pronunciations are different and could be different again wherever you go in the diaspora.
And what's interesting is you're both the executive producers for this show that's coming up August 27th at the Miami Beach Bandshell.
Yes.
What can people expect?
Miami Beach?
Yes.
They can expect an amazing experience. I mean, something that I set out to do when I started the show was, when I see a show, any show, I don't like to be bored. I like to be, drawn into something. It doesn't always have to be fast music, but it needs to be telling a story, or it needs to capture my soul, and that's what we've done with this show. And whenever we put together the production yearly here in Miami, of which this is the 10th year, we always try to structure the repertoire of the show in a way that it leaves the audience wanting more after a little bit. So you have a huge dance number that leaves everybody on their feet, and then you have a little bit calmer number or something that is maybe a little more introspective. So you definitely get the passion of flamenco and the duende that they talk about. And so everyone always leaves just, I would say, in a deeper state than when they left.
And what we have now is our second beautiful fusion of music and dance and song. And let's watch.
A las dos en grande sí.
That was really impactful. I'm so glad. Wow, I just I'm in awe. I mean, were you trained at doing this? What was some of your training? You grew up in Chicago.
I grew up in Chicago. My dance training in reality is just international folk dancing. But when I was young, I started playing the guitar at a young age, and I actually started playing flamenco guitar when I was 12 years old. That, for some reason, connected with me. It was always my passion. I went to Spain as a teenager after high school. And to continue my flamenco studies of guitar. The thing is, which was interesting, because growing up in Chicago, there was the music, but I didn't even know that the flamenco dancing existed until I got to Spain. I met Paco through the guitar, and he was actually working with some
flirting with her
flamenco
through your
dancers.
guitar?
Yeah, I was trying, I said, this small American girl, let's go.
How long has this partnership been?
40 years.
40 years. God
ago.
bless you both.
And, he became first my guitar teacher, and then I brought him back with me to Chicago, and we got married. And then I said to him, I think I would really, because I always loved dancing, I'd really love to learn how to dance. I was young, very young. Am I too old to learn flamenco? And he said, absolutely not, give it a go. And I was familiar with the rhythms. That's one of the hardest things. Like I said, I didn't have any, classical dance training, but we went back to Madrid, and I studied. I'm still studying. And the wonderful thing about flamenco, it's not like ballet. I mean, you can have the families, you could be dancing flamenco your whole life.
You mean I could start at this tender young age of mine?
You could start now and be dancing, for the next 20, 30 years. You have the grandmas, great-grandmas dancing, 90-year-old, and the little kids at 2 years old are dancing. It's amazing. I've never seen anything like it. It's a live, growing, evolving, continuously evolving art form that's alive in Spain today. Flamenco has a very strong gypsy influence to it, but of course it's from the southern part of Spain, Andalusia, and as we mentioned, that has a lot of influence of those people that were living in Spain at that time before they were expelled with the Inquisition, but has a very strong Arab, Moorish influence, and of course, as we mentioned, the Jewish influence as well. And one thing I want to say, because you asked, about Flamenco Sephardit and what can people expect, and I can tell you this show is so popular, we're on year number 10.
I was going to say 10th year.
Year number 10. Why? Because it's extremely unusual. There's nothing like it, and it blends so many different elements. If you're a classical music lover, opera, classical guitar, flamenco dancing, and the combination of all of them together makes for really quite a spectacle, and that's why we keep doing it year after year. So I would say, if you have not seen it yet, this is your chance. Come on out and see it this year.
Well, then give the plug. Go ahead. Give the website. Give the phone number.
Jeff?
It's
I love it. You're a really good assistant. I love it. Jeff?
It's www.flamencosepardit.com. Sunday, August 27th at the Miami Beach Bandshell at 7:30 p.m.
And it's 786-453-2897 for tickets. Tell me what else what else you want the world to know about. How did you all meet? That's even more exciting. This is it's like, how did you meet? We walked into a bar, and just like you didn't have a guitar, though. Jeff, you didn't have a guitar, did you?
I did not, unfortunately, no. No, I met Paco first through another colleague of ours in the flamenco world down here when I was going to a lot of the tablaos here and just talking to people, and they said, you have to meet Paco Fonta. He's a very unusual individual and so talented, and certainly both are true. Paco
Ask Celia.
And Paco, of course, introduced me to Celia, and Paco has been instrumental here because I'm certainly not a flamenco expert by any means. So we would sit down together and talk about the Ladino songs and say, Paco, what does this remind you of in the flamenco world? Or he'd say, this Sephardic song really fits well with this flamenco, and he has been so instrumental in the technical aspects of how we fuse these together and how we are able to get classical musicians, opera singers, violins, and cello, which is very hard to incorporate into flamenco. And he's been super in this way of collaboration and getting us to where we are today.
Paco, what do you find is like the hardest obstacle in when fusing the different genres? What in your mind as an artist, what goes through your head?
Well, for me, the most important thing when this you're doing is the respect that you have to have for each one of the music. So when you are mixing, some of the element may get loose on the way. So some of the elements of the flamenco may go to the Sephardic music. In the same way, so take the Sephardic music had to adapt a little bit to the flamenco. So that's the most difficult part, I will say, to make that smooth enough so you will not even see that it's different music. So that was the hard thing to do. So when I hear the music, I say, okay, maybe we can use this, but I had to use at the same time, say, okay, the tonalities is very important too. The tonality had to be similar too. Not only in some of the music, I just the character of the music, so the sentiment, what is feeling there. This maybe the feeling doesn't go with the music that I have that will go with that music. So what is I choose, the feeling, or I choose the tonality of the music and So in some of the places I choose the feeling of the music more than. And that is where sometimes you will see like a big change. So like all of a sudden, it's not really big change because it's the same feeling, so you will not. But all of a sudden, there is one rhythm, and the rhythm change. For example, we are doing some rhythm like it's in 4, and all of a sudden we go to the Soleá because there's a very deep sorrow going there, and the Soleá will express that with that song. Doesn't mean that the song is the same or have anything to do one song with the other, but the feeling is there.
And it's very interesting. You as producers of this show, you're also artists. So you have to marry both of the business end of it as well as the creative. How difficult was that for you, Jeff?
Not too difficult because, when it's something you're passionate about, for me, it's just joyful. So it's, of course, can be very stressful at times, and any performing engagement is stressful. And when you're producing anything, it costs money. You have to make sure you sell tickets. You have to get a venue. So there's a lot of logistical elements that have to be done. We're lucky enough to get grants from the city of Miami Beach and Miami-Dade County that have helped us through these years. But it's I enjoy the business aspect of it as well as the creative. So it's nice to put the two together and to be part of something that is a bigger picture than just a performance itself, which is what I wanted the show to be, about bringing religions together and about reminding people that our similarities outweigh our differences.
Absolutely, through the music, and it's such an interesting, and through the movement of dance.
So as we were saying, so the very, very, very first year, Jeff produced it on his own, and he, asked us to be a part of it, and he contracted us out. And it was an experiment, and we didn't know how it was going to go. And when it was over, it was amazing, and we were so happy with it. It was such a great show. And we said, we really want to do this again. But as Jeff was saying, very, very expensive. So I suggested to Jeff, Paco and I have a company. It's a not-for-profit company called Siempre Flamenco, where we produce many shows throughout Miami-Dade County all year round. And I said, look, I'd really like to see if, we can get on board with Siempre Flamenco, and we can see if we can get some money to do this again, because it's such a good show. And that's how that came together. So Siempre Flamenco, which is our not-for-profit, came together with Jeff and Flamenco Sephardit to be able to get the funding with the wonderful help of Miami-Dade County Cultural Affairs and the City of Miami Beach Cultural Affairs that we've been able to continue producing this show, and now we're on the 10th year. So it's
Congratulations, or as they say, mazel tov.
wonderful. Thank you.
But is it just the performers that we've seen here, or are there more performers going to be?
No. The show, how many performers are there total?
We have
10?
9 performers
Nine.
total on the cast. So we have 2 dancers who are both here today.
And what are their names? Besides you, Miss Celia.
Celia Fonta and Jose Junco, who's been a phenomenal part of the show.
He was wonderful in the other segments.
And we have Natalie Avila, who is an international opera star.
Beautiful voice. And she's local.
Absolutely
She's a
Local.
professor locally.
She is. I actually met her conducting the opera many years ago here, and so she actually has a master's in vocal performance, but she wrote her master's thesis in cante hondo, which is the form of flamenco that Paco is known as an expert in. We also have strings in the cast. We have Sergio Carleo on violin, Emily Yoshimoto on cello. We also have Nelson Martinez, an internationally renowned opera singer who sings at the Metropolitan Opera and many other places in the world. And we have Jose Moreno, who is an accomplished flamenco percussionist, singer, dancer. He is from Miami. He lives in New York, but comes back and forth quite a lot. So it's an extremely well-rounded cast.
And we also have an incredible flamenco and classical guitarist who's coming with us this year, named Adam Del Monte. He performs also, internationally throughout the world, playing classical guitar, and he's also an incredibly accomplished flamenco guitarist as well.
And again, a perfect fit to the show because he studied as a classical guitarist and then branched off and studied flamenco guitar, so he's able to incorporate both of them extremely well.
What's your message to the community before we have to wrap up for this experience that you've had?
My message to the community is that really this is a wonderful show that is not to be missed. And I can guarantee 100% that you're going to go away feeling really, really, really uplifted and good and happy. And that's it. Come on out. And I hope you join us.
Well, I say the same to my wife. You have to agree with the wife.
You're a very good husband. Is my husband taking notes right now?
Well, I would say in the sense that I said, come to see us, enjoy something very special, something very different. It's flamenco, but it's Sephardic music too. It's the Middle Eastern, the Middle Ages coming to today, and with the classical music, with Jeff put it all this arrangement there with the violin and this. He say, okay, this is good, this is not good. It's beautiful. You're gonna see something very special.
And
Something
Jeff?
very special.
Jeff, what is your parting words for the community as we welcome them into the Miami Beach Bandshell, August
Miami Beach
27th? I'm going to keep going on that. They can get tickets where?
That Flamenco Sephardit.com or by contacting the Miami Bandshell. My message to the community would be that, we are doing this as a performance to remind people of the positivity in the world. We are not historians that are purporting to say that Sephardic music and Ladino and flamenco are exactly the same thing or exactly the same origins, but we're making changes and putting them together to remind us of the greater good. So one of the pieces we do is about Abraham, the father of Jews, Muslims, and Christians. So the idea is if we all have the same father, then there has to be a way for us to live in peace together. And that is the true message of the show.
It's beautiful. And it's been a pleasure being with you and the rest of your performers. And we're going to leave our audience with the last song and dance and singing. And get your tickets. August 27th, right here in our community. What a great way to learn about culture, to bring people together for an evening under the beautiful skies of Miami. And so I'm going to leave you with that. I'm Fara Sachs. This has been the Community Voice, and thank you so much for coming
Thank you
today.
for having us.
Thank you.
Break legs.
Busco el quererte, como si fuera mía, busco el quererte como si fuera mía, busco el quererte suerte y en la luz de tus ojos veo mi suerte y en la luz de tus ojos veo amor. Es cosa grande que en la luz de tus ojos, es cosa grande que en la luz de tus ojos mi alma quiera encontrarme.
La rosa florece en el mes de mayo. La rosa florece en el mes de mayo. Mis llamas se escurecen sufriendo del amor. Mis llamas se más presto ven paloma, más presto ven conmigo, más presto ven paloma, más presto ven conmigo, más presto ven querida, corre y sálvame, más presto ven querida, corre y sálvame.
Están bailando, están bailando. Están bailando un clavel y una rosa. Están bailando y un clavel y una rosa. Están bailando. Están bailando la rosa encarnada, el clavel blanco, la rosa encarnada, el clavel blanco. Porque la rosa contra más encarnada, porque la rosa contra más encarnada, mi alma maravillosa. Hola, hola. Digo a los míos, digo a los míos. Digo a los míos cuando miro tus ojos, digo a los míos cuando miro tus ojos, digo a los míos, digo a los míos que miran por donde vienen los enemigos, que miran por donde vienen los enemigos. ¡Hey! Y yo te ruego que aunque me hagas ceniza, y yo te ruego que aunque me hagas ceniza, mi alma me deje el fuego.